Well, the Trump administration taking further steps to end asylum system abuses. The DHS announcing today it will expand its Remain in Mexico policy, requiring asylum seekers to wait outside the United States. U.S. officials are slated to make the first returns of illegal immigrants in the Texas border city of Brownsville as early as today. The policy was already in place in Laredo and El Paso, Texas, as well as San Diego, California. Well, the Mexican ambassador to the United States says his country is not ready to sign an agreement to help deal with the crisis at the border. Martha Barcarena says she rejects the third country safe agreement, which would force asylum seekers to head to the United States to first pursue safe haven in Mexico. If there's no deal by Monday, new tariffs could go into effect. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo will be meeting with the Mexican foreign minister this weekend to talk about that agreement, along with illegal immigration as well as trade. Joining me now, Sarah Carter, investigative reporter, a fellow with the Independent Women's Forum, and a Fox Business contributor. Sarah, great to see you as always.
It's great to be on, Greg. Thank you.
So the U.S. government is now enforcing this new policy. Sorry, you got to stay on the other side of the fence or the border there. And Mexico is saying, well, gosh, we're not ready to handle all of this.
Well, then they need to stop them at their border with Guatemala. See, the problem here, Greg, and over the weekend, this past weekend, I was talking to officials, Guatemalan government officials, as well as U.S. officials about this issue. Remember, President Morales from Guatemala did not show up on Monday to discuss this issue with the president, mainly because inside his own nation, the leftist opposition was basically pressuring their constitutional court to stop the president of Guatemala from signing any safe country third agreement. They went so far as doing that. They put an injunction against him. Then they also put an injunction against his ability to sign any agreement with any other Central American nation or Mexico. Then you have President Obrador of Mexico. He understands. He knows what's going on here, and he's allowing it to happen. I mean, just look at what he said today about El Chapo Guzman, who is the head of the Sinaloa cartel, who just got a life sentence. He basically thought it was inhumane to sentence El Chapo to life in a maximum security prison.
He's a mass murderer.
He's a mass murderer, and he's poured poison into our country for decades.
Oh, yeah.
He made billions of dollars, and the Sinaloa cartel is still being operated in Mexico by his family members.
Yeah, well, you know, when you've got so-called partners like that, Mexico,
that's right.
You know, it's hard to get anything accomplished. By the way, I read your story that you broke about the Oversight Committee and their report that the hysteria by the media notwithstanding, the truth is that roughly 95% of children have actually been reunited with their families, right?
That's absolutely correct. So of the numbers, of the data that has been given to the House Oversight Committee, remember, this is thousands of pages of documents. This is a ton of work by Health and Human Services to ensure that they're getting the correct data to the committee. They have shown that of the data, which is more than half of the kids that they had in their custody at the time. Now, remember, it keeps increasing because people keep coming across the border. All of them, about 95%, have been returned to their families. So they're not even being held by the U.S. This is all politicizing. Let me give you some stats here, Greg, just so that the viewers understand what's going on here. In the last 5 years, family units have increased. That means people traveling with children to the United States across the U.S. southern border over 620%.
Right.
Asylum claims in the last 8 years have increased over 1,700%. In 2013, 1 out of 10 people used to apply for asylum because it's almost impossible to get. Not now, of course, because they let them do that. But now it's, I mean, literally 1 out of 100, and now it's 1 out of 10. So it increased up to 1,700%. This is what we're looking at, and this is the reason why President Trump and his administration realizes there is a humanitarian crisis at the border. You cannot come into the United States just because you come from a bad neighborhood or because there's poor economic conditions. That's not a reason for asylum. President Obama said that himself.
I was going to say, those are President Obama's words. But of course, the presidential candidates, have amnesia, acute amnesia every, 5 or 10 days. Before I say goodbye to you, I have to ask you about, because this is right into your wheelhouse, the insufferable James Comey, who loves to insinuate himself into every conceivable issue. The Reverend Comey, I guess. Bishop Comey, we should call him. So the latest thing is he says he compared Americans who support President Trump. He compared them to a, quote, mob, and they should be sent back to their dark corner. Doesn't this just prove all what you and I have been saying, that Comey is nothing but a hyper-partisan who abused his position of power for political reasons to try to influence the election and destroy a president? Absolutely,
Greg. This type of rhetoric coming from the former, by the way, fired former FBI director of the United States, and the rhetoric coming out of his mouth and that of John Brennan has been incredible. In fact, it's extremely dangerous rhetoric, and that's why I'm really concerned. What's going to happen during the hearing next week with Mueller? What we're going to be seeing evolving from this, because there is a reason why Mueller has agreed to testify, and it's not for any good purposes. Remember, these people are very tight. Mueller and Comey are very close friends, and to turn around and call Americans who voted for a president to put him into office a mob and say that those Americans should be put back into a dark corner is extremely, I mean, it's really unheard of. And he really should, I think, take a step back and keep his mouth closed. You have said this before, everything you say can and will be held against you. So I think there's a lot of questions that the American people actually have of James Comey, and I would love the opportunity to ask him those questions. He is the most malevolent actor in this entire hoax and witch hunt, and the damage that James Comey did to the FBI, take a decade for the FBI, which is a very good institution, to recover. And there's James Comey, the vainglorious Comey, weighing in on top of the mountain. Sarah Carter, good to see you. Thanks. Great to see you too, Greg. Thank you.